that's what makes a good board game, is if there's tension dramatically, like if this doesn't happen, if this doesn't go my way on this turn, I'm screwed.
You are one of the most creative guys I know. How do you explain yourself when people ask what you do? Like, where do you start?
I used to start by saying I'm a composer and a game designer. And actually, the other day I thought about switching that title around, because I've been doing more board game design lately. Mm-hmm. But I kind of explain to people, like, I started doing one thing. I actually wanted to make films when I was younger. And then, I started doing it as my job, and then I got less interested, and I needed something else. And I got into music and studied that in college, and then started making money in that.
The composing side of things, did that take a while to kind of break into that world, right?
Yeah.
Because there's not too many film composers out there, and even fewer are getting actual work on jobs.
I studied it in college, but I didn't really think I would be doing it as my job. I don't know why I didn't connect the two, but it was just like a lot of things I kind of just wanted to explore. And then I ended up doing some sound design for different films locally, and eventually it was like, I guess I could compose for these movies. I did learn how to do that. I loved my professor, but he warned me, like, you got to be able to compose really fast. And that scared me off for a few years after college. Like, maybe I can't do film scoring.
And be super collaborative, which is not, necessarily in the job description for a composer, because you're expressing yourself, creating your art, right?
Yeah.
And, then to match it to film is not always seamless.
I actually really love film scoring, almost more than just composing for an orchestra now, because I do have those parameters to work with, and I'm a puzzle solver kind of by nature, and film scoring is so fun to figure out, like, what is the best fit for this scene.
Limitation is like the best thing you can have, right? Because if you had every paint color on your palette, you want to use them all, right? Or the amateur wants to use them all.
Yeah.
Right? And the person that's done it for a while is like, no, we got to pick a couple.
Yeah.
And the same thing, I think, tonally probably work. And instrumentally, vocally, all the things apply to film scoring too. Yeah,
I mean, if you listened to my senior project in college, you would have seen that I used every single color in the palette, overload everybody. And but yeah, film scoring now, I actually think of it sort of like graphic design versus illustration. Where graphic design, you're trying to do something real clean, to the point, and there is something satisfying about that minimalist approach. Like a lot of, especially documentaries I work on, really just, they want a simple drone to give the feeling of, I should care about this emotion here.
Yeah.
But it doesn't need to, like, overdo it.
You want to feel it more than you hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes you'll hear scores, and this applies to every single art, where it's like, raising their hand, look at me, and it can be a little distracting, because they all have to work together. All the pieces have to work together cohesively. And the moment one kind of stands out and says, hey, I'm important, is when the rest suffer, right? So doing that dance, I think, is you probably learned to do that well.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes it is, like, when you're thinking about a score in a film, sometimes it does need to be a character, like another character in the film almost. Sometimes I think of John Bryan's scores, where it's really distinctive sound.
It's still in service of the overall.
Yeah, and you get accustomed to it, and probably most people don't notice, but to me it stands out in a great way.
And then you're dealing with other humans, which is the biggest wild card of them all.
Yeah.
Do you think being creative in the upper Midwest is a weight, or is there some freedom?
For me, I love it here. It's like the size of the cities is kind of perfect for what I'm doing. It's like I can meet all of you creative filmmakers, and at the same time, it's not so big that I would feel lost. And I couldn't. For me, the fun part is like the community. Like, or being a bigger part of the community is nice. Like, I've been able to start up Film Score Fest. It's a local festival I do where we combine filmmakers and composers. And we have a live orchestra at the screening. And it's like I can set all that stuff up and get grant funding because the state likes those kind of things. And I don't know, I could do those in LA or New York too, but I don't know, it wouldn't have the same feel, I think.
A lot more competition for one. So you'd be, one of many. I mean, ultimately the cream rises to the top. So I'm sure it would be a matter of time.
And I mean, it's tough. There's not as many jobs or budget as there would be elsewhere. But at the same time, it's everyone I've worked with here is awesome. Like I've never had a bad experience in the film world, which is maybe is an exception, but
well, we were talking before too. It's like, I mean, you kind of have to be omnivorous. It's hard to be just the one thing as a creative because, projects come and go, things are in fashion, things aren't, budgets, go up and down. So you found a way to kind of craft a career or a life where you're kind of pulling from these different pieces and depending on probably on your energy level too, you can decide where you want to put your creative energy. That has to be, pretty freeing as well, I would assume.
Yeah, I've had one full-time job in my life, and that lasted 1 year. And it was pretty fun, though. It was one I was teaching board game design at UW Stout, and that's about the one job I would want to do full-time.
Yeah. I'd want to do that job. I know nothing about board game design, but that sounds like it's pretty great.
Yeah.
Like you're just showing up to play. I mean, obviously you're teaching and you have to get a lot of those things across, but you're, using the part of the brain that is probably the same that you have to engage when you're playing said games, right? Yeah, that's cool. And the kids probably loved it too.
Oh, yeah. They were all video game students. But for their first year, we teach them how to make board games because they don't know coding yet.
Right. And that's what board games are.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Just a series of choices.
Figuring out, a series of choices, figuring out how to make something fun.
That's pretty cool. And then there's not a lot of video game companies around here? Or are they?
They're
a sneaky amount.
Maybe a few. There's like a decent indie game community, but
sure. Yeah. On the board gaming side, that's like sneaky big here.
Yes, it is.
When I first started learning about all the companies here, I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
They're not necessarily like again raising their hand and saying, hey, we're creating, all these classic games or distributing these classic games here, but they are.
Well, it's part, I think, because of the weather.
True.
Honestly, like the Midwest is really good for board games because we play a lot in the wintertime when there's nothing else to do. And somehow that's fostered these gigantic companies to pop up.
I guess what we didn't talk about a whole lot is like gaming. Like, why'd you get into that? Like, what kind of inspired you to take the leap? And then tell us about your first project.
Yeah, I think I was a huge fan of the Star Wars card game when I was growing up, which is kind of like Magic the Gathering. Like you buy packs and open these things, and there's this like really exciting world as a kid to open a pack and I could make a deck with this. So I didn't really think about. I was like making fake cards a long time ago, and sometimes those I feel like the things you're inspired by as a kid sometimes loop back, because it was many years later that I actually thought about, I guess I could make a game. Like, why not channel this inner kid energy?
Totally. Yep. I was the same way with film. Like, filmmaker wasn't on the career checklist when you're growing up, but growing up I loved movies, I loved writing, I loved playing around with cameras, but the light bulb never went off until like just right after college. I'm like, oh, people actually do this.
Right.
I'm a person.
Yeah.
Why can't I do this?
Yeah.
I'm, if I'm, of average intelligence, certainly there's people, at my strata that are doing the same. So why not? Yeah. So what was that?
Like the game. So yeah, for me, it was like seeing one of my friends who made a kind of Catan in space game just with some tag board, and I saw that. I was like, I never knew he was even interested in making a game, but I was inspired. Like, oh, I guess people could just make their own games. So I feel like every creative thing, you just need some example of someone doing it to see like, oh yeah, that is a path.
Right. Huh. Yeah, it's funny how, we just need that one little thing to inspire us to do it. So what was the first thing you tried?
Oh, it was, I think I called it Doppelbomber. It was just like these, the stereotypical first game you make is roll and move game where you roll dice, move around on a grid, try to destroy the other people. I don't know.
Yeah. And was that, when you did it, was it encouraging? And you're like, okay, I did something, even though maybe it's mid.
Yeah,
but
it didn't work like 100% great, but it was fun to try it out on my friends. I think like the really fun part about game design that I really enjoyed is like seeing everyone at the table playing, and you get immediate feedback one way or the other.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of other arts, you don't get the immediate feedback.
Right. Yeah. Music and film, you like spend a long time making these things and then put it out there, and sometimes you don't even know.
People are like, it was good.
Yeah.
Right? Where in a game, people would be like, I don't understand what I'm supposed to do. Or you hear them laughing, or, like you get that immediate feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I think pretty rare.
Yeah. And I think that experience of playtesting a game with people carries back into the other fields, art and film and things, because you're really like real time seeing people interacting with this thing, and like how do you get someone's attention on certain things. Right. Like if someone is like not getting a rule, like how do you get them to understand it, versus like in a piece of music or something, how do I focus attention on this part and like make someone feel something about.
Same. Yeah, it's the same, just the medium is different. It's how do you get somebody from A to Z, really. I went to school for technical writing, so
I'll hire you to write some real books for me.
Please. No, I got out of that quickly. But there's a lot of rhetorical theory. How do you persuade somebody? How do you convince somebody? And it's not always like what they're looking at. It's what like maybe preceded it, or their state of mind. Right?
State of mind is huge.
Were they frustrated before they read that piece, and therefore they can't fully focus on it because you made them right? Like there's a dance that has to happen there, and the games is pretty obvious, but it sounds like even on like the scoring side, you're able to take that mindset and understand how the attention is focused and kind of the emotion that you're trying to get out of somebody. Yeah, that's interesting.
With scoring, I think a lot about like when should there be music and when shouldn't there be music, and like half of my job is kind of figuring out like what are the start and stop points and how should they like flow in the film.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to have the contrast too, right? If it's all music all the time, right?
Yeah.
You're not giving, that score a chance to kind of like do its thing, because it's just the layer is constantly there, right? You stop to notice it too. I've also noticed that oftentimes I'll put music in a scene that probably doesn't belong there because the scene isn't working. So sometimes music is an artificial way to like help make the scene work, or sometimes it pops another idea, where you put a piece of music and you're like, oh no, that's not what the scene's about, it's about this, right? So it's about that discovery. I found, at least when you're doing like the temp tracks, the music can really tell you what that scene's supposed to be about, and you would think the writing or the performance would. Right. Sometimes it's not that.
That's a good point, because usually as a composer you kind of want the film to be finished and or the edit to be locked. Because you're going to have to rewrite music quite a bit if the edit changes.
Well, for sure.
Depending on the style of music.
But every now and then you'll have a scene you think it works, and you put the music and you're like, oh, that's not what that scene is. So music just unlocks that part of the brain, or it gives you context maybe. So yeah, it's hugely valuable. Even on the writing side too, it allows me to go to a place, right, that I can't normally get to just on my own, right? It just gives you like, it kind of spins your brain a little bit, right? And it's like, okay, now I'm feeling locked in. So yeah, there's a lot of power there. You guys are dangerous.
Yeah. Well, music is like one of the few art forms that still feels pretty magical. Like it's in this other zone of communicating that we don't really use. Like visual art, I do enjoy it and I do it myself, but to me it feels more like, oh, that's the thing. I can see it. Music still has the element of time that is mysterious when you pop on a song and I don't know where this is going, like literally same with films, but
I mean, have you thought a lot about the kind of the evolution of humans via music, right? Like we hear like a pounding drum beat and all of a sudden you feel a little amped up, and that probably goes back thousands of years, right?
I think some people have tried to make the case that we actually sang before we spoke words.
Sure.
Or, like vocalizations, who knows, maybe like birds. I don't know.
Right. Yep. And this is mildly related too, but I know some composers and sound designers too, when they want a sense of danger, they'll kind of bury like the sound of a predator. Maybe like a lion roar or a snake hiss.
Ooh.
You won't know it's there, but you'll know it's there. You'll feel it. You get a little nervous.
Yeah.
And it's like, really, we're just kind of dumb animals when it comes down to it. And what triggers us is not all that complicated. But then when you get into the magic thing, like I don't know how to describe how music makes me feel. It just does, right? Is that cultural? Is that society? Is that, because we're evolved from, the cave people sitting around the fire, forever? Yeah.
One side story, I always think of Wolverine, one of the Wolverine movies set in Japan. And there's like ninjas in the background. And they used the sound. So speaking of animal sounds they used the sound of a loon along in Japan, like for these ninjas. And anyone in Minnesota would be like, oh, okay. Is this the lottery commercial or something?
Right. But that's Okinawa, Minnesota.
Right
there.
So, it's just funny how sound design things can be subtle to some. Some people wouldn't even think twice, but because of our context.
But somehow it worked. Like a loon in Japan somehow worked. Was it like
probably
because it mimicked some sort of flute sound? Maybe
it sounds a little like mysterious and
right. Let's talk about some of the games.
Sure.
We talked about your first one that didn't quite work, and then you just kept working on them, and you got to a point where you got pretty adept at it, and now you're. Would you say a published game designer? Is that the proper terminology?
Yeah. I'm lucky enough to say that. It's tough to get your games published because there's way more designers than there are publishers making games.
What was that first project that you got or made that kind of got the attention and kind of set you on the path?
Yeah, so I had this idea for a game about the four humors, which is about in medieval times, and actually going back to like the ancient Greeks, they thought your bodily fluids would change your personality. Like if you had too much yellow bile, you would be aggressive, and too much blood makes you friendly. And so I just loved that theme, and I tried about 7 totally different games with that, and like 6 of them failed, but finally the 7th one, I just found something simpler, more elegant, and it kind of just worked.
How did you know how to do that? Just from your friends that you were watching, or did you?
I started going to events.
Okay.
In the Twin Cities, there's like a lot of meetups for people to bring their prototypes, as crappy as they may look, and get some feedback from people. the buyer from Games by James happened to be there. Games by James being their local game store.
Yep.
And he played that version that I had just whipped up really quickly. And he's like, when do you think I could get this in the store? Wow. And that was a sign. I had not heard that kind of comment with my games before. And I was like, well, okay, let me
get back to you.
I'll get back to you. So in that same weekend, it was like the closing time of the convention. But I talked to one publisher. I'm like, hey, do you want to try this game? And we played it, and he liked it. And yeah.
Was there anything novel about the game itself? Or?
Yeah, it was. I think probably most of my games I try to do something new. For sometimes publishers are thrown by that. It's like, oh, this is too new.
Well, they want like something that sold before, right? And they can predict on what it's going to do, right?
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
Although publishers are often game designers themselves, so they get hooked in on like, ooh, this is cool. Like, what's the hook?
I mean, film distribution is the same way. It's
sure,
like,
right.
But so you went to that event and you got some instant feedback from industry insiders. And then you had to get to work to develop it further, or what was the next step?
Next step would be like making sure the game kind of works for the average player. And we spent a long time, like several years, just like figuring out, okay, we have this core thing that works on my scrawled out pieces of paper. But what do we add to it to make it a product? And that was where he came in and helped figure out the Kickstarter, what it should look like. And he could kind of see that I was passionate about the art side of it too, because I, already did a few like sketches.
Yep. And
so he said, hey, do you want to try art directing this? And I ended up working with an awesome illustrator in China. I'd send her my sketches, and overnight she'd send back beautiful, fun illustrations.
That's where the time zone change can be helpful.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
Who knew? And then we did a Kickstarter in the beginning of 2020. We launched it.
Wow.
And then realized, oh, people aren't going to be able to get together and play board games. So that set us back a little bit too. But
the Kickstarter was successful.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we raised around $40,000 for the game. And yeah, it's really solid for an indie game.
So how does the deal look for you in that scenario? Are you sharing in profit? Do you license a game and get something up front? Is every deal different?
Every deal is a little different, but usually I get a small percentage of each sale, a couple bucks for the game. The nice thing is when you sign a game with a publisher, you don't have to do that much work after the fact to sell the games or anything. So that's the side where, I've thought about self-publishing, but people always say if you want to make a game and be a game designer, sell your game to someone else so that you can make more games. Because you're going to become a business person if you want to try to self-publish.
Yeah, and it's hard to wear both hats. Yeah. Well, you brought it.
Yeah.
Some people are listening via audio, so we'll do our best to describe it, but you may have to go to YouTube or Google For Humors to see what it is.
For Humors looks like. The art was inspired by Where's Waldo. I love the idea of little cards with little scenes on them where you get to place your tokens on which character do I want to affect their personality. And you're placing these tokens face down, and each character could be swing one way or the other. So the king could be either friendly or aggressive.
Right.
And it's a little bit of the prisoner's dilemma, if you've ever heard that. It's do we want to work together?
Right.
Or kill each other?
Right. Yep.
And so it's that exploded out into all these different scenarios. And I had been mentioning attention. How do I get players to think about certain things? And I think part of it is I wanted to have multiple scenes out there at once. So I'm deciding where I want to spend my time on which battle is worth fighting, and how can I convince other players at the table to get on board with this plan over here.
And your name's right on the box.
Yeah.
Which had to feel pretty cool.
Yep, part of the contract, usually they put your name on the box. Weird to see this game kind of be played all over the place. And I know it's being played in a lot of other countries now, in different languages. And I'll never see those games, versus like when you're play testing a game at the beginning, I've been in every single play test of most of my games.
And then are you getting feedback when it's out there? Like, are you reading the reviews, or,
Yeah, sometimes I read reviews, and they're very polarizing on this game versus some of the other games I've done. I don't know why, but like people love it or they don't get it, and or maybe they read the rules wrong and the game fell flat. So that's the other danger. And like films, if they don't get it,
right?
Oh, you can't do anything about it anymore.
Well, they might have looked away during an important piece of dialogue that made everything click. Well, recently news just came out that Netflix is asking their filmmakers to be more descriptive with the dialogue, to say what's happening on screen.
I heard about this.
Because now viewers are often also on their phone. So if you miss something visually, you're not going to track it. So you're going to, miss something in the story, which I both understand, and it makes me incredibly sad to think that, we've lost the attention to, do that. I mean, luckily with games, you kind of have to focus on it, right? You're not, I'm sure there are some people multitasking while they're playing it.
Yeah.
But you can't help
That's usually the sign if someone's on their phone.
Right.
That's like, okay, this is not as engaging as it could be.
Back to the drawing board.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, so that was kind of the first thing. Four Humors was the first thing that kind of took off.
Yeah.
And then it was nothing but, zeros in your bank account after that, and just easy rolling. Right?
Lots of zeros, we'll say that.
It started with zeros.
Yeah.
Right.
But
But you had a game published, and it was, successful, right? In some metric.
Yep.
And it gave you the confidence to keep working.
Yeah, and I think getting your foot in the door with a game published is great, because then I can talk to other publishers and say
they take it more seriously.
Yeah, a little bit more.
Yeah.
I've had 5 games published and maybe 7 that are signed and going to be published in the next few years.
That seems like an incredible batting average. I don't know the industry, but that seems like
it's a little lucky.
Good.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's lucky, but
part of networking skills that I've learned from the film industry, honestly. And I spend a lot of time on it. It's really just dedicating a lot of time, since I don't have a full-time job. I think part of it is my willingness to give up on a version and throw it in the trash, make a new one, because I think iterating is so huge.
That had to come from the music side, right? Where you learn pretty quickly if something's working or not.
Right.
You're not going to fight in perpetuity to make it work.
Right, and I still sometimes do that, and I now sense when I'm doing that.
Right.
It's like, okay, I think it's time to
I'm
start
doing the
from
thing
scratch.
again.
Yep.
But
yeah, the film scoring thing, it probably did influence me a lot, because I work with directors and they say no, this doesn't work for me.
Right.
And if I was a little more egotistical about it, I would push back a bunch and then come up with something that no one likes. And then with a board game, it's you put it out there, it's really obvious if it's not working. And if it's not working, then a publisher won't publish it. So,
right.
Yeah.
I only know one composer / game designer, and that's you. In the Venn diagram of composers and game designers, is there anything kind of that they do have in common that you've seen, other than obviously being talented and creative? Is there anything that they have in common that has led to success, maybe, or maybe as a challenge?
Well, you're making me think about what is the similarities in all these fields, and I think tension is part of it. Like, that's what makes a good board game, is if there's tension dramatically, like, if this doesn't happen, if this doesn't go my way on this turn, I'm screwed.
Yeah.
And in film and music, you're creating tensions, but it's tensions that are satisfying. Well, they're both satisfying tensions.
Yep.
In different ways.
Conflict. Yep. That drives everything, right? Things can be a little saccharine and boring without that conflict.
Yeah.
And some of it is, frustrating. Some of it's illuminating, right? There's different flavors of conflict. Well, I'm learning.
Yeah, and the flow of, like, a board game is you have the tension and release. And, like, okay, this thing happened, sweet. Now I'm gaining all this money from Monopoly.
I passed go, or I landed on Park Place, or
Yeah. Why, even, like, I'll say it on record, a bad game like Monopoly, people love. And I can't say it's a bad game because of that fact.
Yeah.
But it's got this, like, satisfying thing of the tension and release. Okay, I've planned for this. Let's see if it pays off. And, like, in music, it's almost like the artist is doing that for the listener. They're setting up something, and then there's a payoff eventually.
That's fascinating. Can we talk about what you're working on now?
Sure.
Yeah, you want to bring it out here?
Yeah, sure. So my latest board game. My latest board game I'm working on, I'm calling Chromazone, and this is my sell sheet that I would give to publishers to explain the game. But I had a dream, like a literal dream, that I was playing a game and I had sunglasses on, and as I was playing the game, they kept getting darker and darker. And I thought about, like, what if there's a game where you were wearing glasses the whole time and it affected how you saw the game board? And I thought back to, different games that use this red filter to decode things. And I thought, well, what if I had red glasses for one side and blue glasses for the other side? And what if the red glasses were like the computer team and the blue glasses were the human team? And that sparked me to make this game that I've been obsessed with trying to make. And the way it's a space survival game where the computer team sees all these astronauts just in terms of their number value. So, yeah.
So hold on up here. So you can see here, there's a little astronaut and some dots down there, and then some dots up here.
Yeah, and there's if you're wearing the red glasses, you would see the number of their skill level, or if you might see a C for a cyborg.
That's awesome.
And that's hidden from.
So I'm wearing a computer.
Yeah.
So I can see that there's a number in the helmet.
Yeah.
But there's text down here which I can't see.
Right. But because computers can't read emotions.
Right.
And that is where the human glasses come into play. And you read the emotional responses to stress that these astronauts are going to have.
Yep. Now it's the opposite. So I can see that the text says plan.
Yep. They're going to either plan or panic or bite. And biters that's in the theme of this world. Earth has been taken over by biters, and that's why they're traveling to Europa to find a new home. And
you look cool too.
And you look pretty cool, yeah. So this is my version 2 of the glasses. Originally, I was using 3D glasses that I cut out,
swap
the lenses. But these are new and improved.
So what I think is brilliant about this is the fact that it's humans and computers, right? And we're seeing that a lot now with kind of AI, as AI, quote unquote, starts to wake up a little bit. This is going to become more real quickly over the next couple of years. So I wonder if that's going into kind of the thought process, as you put it, in the marketplace.
Yeah, I think my initial inspiration was 2001: A Space Odyssey, and as a human, you're up against HAL, the computer that's sort of trying to just make the mission happen. So you don't know if you can trust them or not, and that's where this like back and forth with the humans and computers, the hidden information works well because I can never 100% trust you, but I can try to read you a little bit. And the funny thing is, like, we can't see each other's eyes right now.
I cannot.
Because of the glasses are filtering each other's eyes. And that was a weird side effect. But if you had another human player, you would be able to see their eyes through the glasses.
So that wasn't intentional.
That was not intentional.
You just found that.
It wasn't, yeah.
Huh.
And so it's got this, like, weird poker element.
Completely.
Like, if you want to try to...
For the red, you should just do like a single round lens.
I thought about that.
Yeah. So you do look like
The
hell.
Yeah. Yep.
So you're pitching this right now, and you might have a few folks interested, but you're not sure. Like how long would it take once somebody says yes, we want to do it, to actually getting out in the marketplace?
Probably 2 to 3 years. So it's very similar to the film world, honestly.
Yeah.
Like. Versus like music, I like switching back and forth between these things because music I can literally write a song in 30 minutes and record it, put it out there.
Press upload. Yeah.
If I wanted.
Yeah.
Might not be the best song, but
right. So yeah, I mean, best case scenario 2 to 3 years from start to finish, but probably 4 or 5.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah. Well, that takes patience and grit to keep pushing. Yeah, and then so this one you're kind of like excited about, but you probably have a handful of others that you're kind of playing around with in different stages. So you're just trying different things and
yeah. I have several card games I've been working on. This is probably one of the more complicated ones, but I enjoy like making simpler card games too, and
So yeah. Tell us about the day-to-day, like when you're actually working on something. Do you like pour a cup of coffee and lay all the games out, and you're like, okay, which one am I feeling today? Or do you have a process?
I use spreadsheets a lot.
Do you?
I have so many game ideas. I kind of put them all in a spreadsheet, and I'll drag them to the top if it's like, okay, this one I think I should work on next. I have a little to-do thing. And I mean, I say that as like, oh yeah, I'm real organized and this is my spreadsheet, but actually my day-to-day is kind of like, what do I feel like doing?
Right. But you're tracking it.
Yeah. Tracking it is very helpful, especially as I start working for other companies developing games. It's like, I need to have logs of what I'm doing. And just for myself to remember, like, why did I make this change here?
Is this the sort of thing that can scale beyond you? Like, could you start a company and bring on other folks and triple down on it? Or
like if I wanted to make a game publishing company kind of thing?
Yeah, or like, there's a hidden secret that a lot of artists aren't the ones actually creating the art. They're just coming up with the ideas, and other people are iterating on it. Like, does that happen? Or is it like, theater where the writer's God, and it has to be their vision and no one else can touch it? Because I'm guessing games by committee probably don't turn out that well often.
Yeah, sometimes they don't, but I'm starting to do more collaborative designs with other designers.
Okay.
And it's still kind of hard to, like, I work at a pretty fast pace. So, and my brain is also wired to just like, this is not working, I'm throwing this away, doing something else.
Hard to do that when you have a collaborator.
Yeah. And I've run into some problems there, for sure, but it's good to work with someone who isn't like that as a balancing point. Despite maybe we don't see eye to eye and they want to keep things like just make incremental changes.
Right.
But it's pretty fun to try to. I'm still learning how to collaborate in that way.
Yeah. It's not easy, especially something like this, right? Where there's so much time and effort put into it that, if you're 1 or 2 degrees, it's going to be something wholly different.
Yeah.
At the end.
Yeah. And you change one rule in a game, and it changes the whole experience. Literally one sentence could change the whole game experience in the rule book.
Just unintended consequences too that you can't know until you start playing it. Like, that affected this, which affected that, which affected this.
Yeah.
It's like a spider web of dominoes.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah.
Which is probably kind of fun when you're doing a film thing too. It's like, ooh, if we change this one line of dialogue, this could change the whole feeling of the film.
Totally. Yeah. It reveals something about a character, which influences everything that happened before. Even though we're not going to go watch that part, now it unlocks something, and you're like, oh, that's why they're an asshole. Like it just makes things make sense in a different way, and it could be one word, a look, a single look, right, can change the entire context of everything that came before it.
Yeah,
which is like pretty fascinating. So one little tweak in the game, I'm sure, is very similar.
Yeah, it's like that thing you talked about with Netflix, like. We have to describe everything, so it's so obvious to the listener. Well, no, it's more compelling sometimes if you don't know why.
I think if you connect all the dots for the viewer, or maybe for the player, like they're not as invested. Right. You need a few of those where they have to make a leap, and then they feel smart, or they feel like they're actively engaged with it. Yeah. Because if you're spoon feeding it to them, like, who cares? Right? Yeah. Yeah, that's boring. If we can find a way to really bring them into it, right? So they're a participant, where they're either forgetting about life, or they're trying to figure out the puzzle, or they're trying to score points, whatever that may be. Yeah. That's the goal, right? Yeah, that's entertainment, really. Tell us about Film Score Fest. Again, you mentioned it before, but you basically do a live score to submitted films.
Yeah, so we pair up composers and filmmakers, and they work on a 5-minute film or less, and then we pick about 20 to screen with the orchestra, and we bring in like a 16-musician orchestra to this film screening, and it's super fun because like, when do you get to see a local film with the orchestra? And they're all over the map, like live action, animation. Sometimes it's like just someone filming their cat in their backyard, and like, what would you do with that as a composer? And when you have all these musicians at your disposal, you kind of want to use them a little more maybe than you would in like actual film score. These are actual film scores, but it's a heightened experience with the orchestra there. Yep.
And that happens in April?
Yeah. So we have our screenings. We're going to be doing 2 on April 26th at the History Theater. So if people are...
And it sells out, right? Or you've added a second screening this year, so...
Yeah, we've added a second screening. So hopefully, with some marketing efforts, we'll sell out the theater. But yeah, we just are excited that, we got 50 teams working on films right now.
Crazy.
So
yeah, that's amazing. And what's your official title on that? Like executive director? Like, are you kind of running the show on that? Like,
I am.
Doing all the...
So I started it 10 years ago, actually, with a good friend of mine from college, Juan Vu, and she's since gotten into the puppetry world, and she's kind of stepped back a little bit, and so I was like, well, I'll keep Film Score Fest going. And yeah, it's been fun. We keep getting grant funded, so I can't not do it.
People love it.
People love it.
Fun.
Yeah.
Speaking of fun, you had a pretty cool scoring opportunity, no pun intended, this year. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, so I got to work on an orchestral version of the Wild Hockey Anthem theme, And that was really fun because, for one, I got to work with the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra, which is like a peak for a composer because they're a very high-level group. I likely won't be able to work with them on my original music, but for this particular thing with the Minnesota Wild, it worked out, and so a friend of mine and I collaborated on this arrangement, and now that music is being heard by thousands of people every game.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the Wild hockey games.
Now hundreds of thousands by the end of the season.
Probably. Yeah. More people will have heard that silly hockey anthem than all my other music combined. And I've done a lot. Like I have, the other project I did at the beginning of the year was to release 24 albums in 24 hours.
I saw that, yeah.
So it's kind of, I've been taking a break from music right now because that was a lot. But
you think?
It goes back to what I was saying about being able to throw away your ideas in a film score. Because what I do is I take all those ideas that I liked, but the director didn't like, and I put them on these albums.
Oh, fun.
And so it's a lot of thrown away film scores, demos, and all these random things that I had been working on over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And when I laid them out, I was like, oh, I have so many albums worth. And I could kind of put them in piles. Whereas releasing all these things wouldn't have made as much sense as singles. So,
do you ever think of releasing those as like Creative Commons or anything like that for other folks to use them? I don't know if that's a thing anymore, but it was for a while.
I guess I haven't really. My thought is, I'll have this giant library of music that maybe filmmakers could license someday. Some of these tracks, and there's some that honestly, like if someone reached out, was like, "Hey, could I use this in my movie or in my video game or something?" I'd be like, "Sure."
Just sitting on a hard drive.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. That's cool. Okay, last couple questions, and we'll let you get out of here. Twin Cities as kind of like a creative hub. What could we be doing better? Do you see any like deficits anywhere where we're not quite hitting the mark? Because I have opinions, and I've shared them on the podcast before. But yeah, what's your thought living and working on both like on the music and the game side?
Yeah, that's hard to say because from my perspective, it's always, I've enjoyed all of these communities I've been in. And probably from your standpoint, you're seeing more of like financial deficits that aren't coming to filmmakers to produce films, and then therefore like can't hire as many people maybe.
It's definitely part of it, yeah.
Which
I guess in like the gaming community, that's quite different. So when you find success, do you feel like you're getting like a ton of support from folks? Like everyone's rooting for you, or are there other game designers saying like, how come he gets to do it and we don't?
I don't know. Maybe there's some of that, but it doesn't factor in. We're very friendly with each other and sharing ideas all the time. And we rely on each other.
Yeah.
Like to help like make our games better. And I have actually been pleasantly surprised in the film industry too. Like I said, very good experiences. And I noticed that it's because we rely on each other to actually make a film. You need all these people. And versus like in the music community, it's also similar, but not the same feeling. Where it's like, I could be a composer and just work on my own all the time if I wanted, sort of. Like bedroom electronic music producer.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's kind of refreshing to go to these filmmaker networking events and like, we are networking and like, doing that thing, but it's really like we got to be friends too.
Of course, right? I mean, a rising tide floats all boats, and we got to work together to make it happen. Yeah, we have a lot of special stuff happening. In this area, and I think people recognize it. How do we make it sustainable? I think is the ultimate thing that we're trying to figure out.
Yeah.
And that's true kind of everywhere, right? We're so used to relying on the coasts to, pay for projects. And my argument has been like, we don't have to, let's not wait for the white knight to come in on the horse. Like, let's make our own stuff. And you're living proof of that, right? Where you're just
kickstarting things and like, sure, I had this idea, so I'll just try it on Kickstarter. And
so anything really fun on the horizon for you? Obviously, you're developing all these games. Always little scoring opportunities here. Anything else you want to let people know about?
The Film Score Fest is the biggest one.
It's a lot of work for the next couple of months.
Yeah.
Is there a website for that?
Yeah, filmscorefest.org.
Nice.
And if you're curious about entering, I say do it because it's free to enter.
Is there a deadline for that?
It'll be a while now because we're doing it every other year.
Okay.
Just for grant funding reasons.
Yep.
And my own sanity reasons.
So like people have time.
Keep up. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and like filmmakers, there's a lot of filmmaking challenges, so I don't want to like overdo it on people.
Totally.
But
all right, so FilmFest.
Filmscorefest.org.
Yep. And then if people wanted to find out about your gaming or anything else,
they could just go to my website, charliemccarron.com.
MCCARON.
2 R's.
Two
yep.
R's. MCCARRON.
Yep.
All right.
And I've got like several game projects I'm excited about, and they'll be coming to Kickstarter in the next couple of years.
Awesome.
And I'll be able to talk more about them then.
All right. We'll have you back.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
All right. Well, thank you for being here. This was awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. This was great.